guy. Let's be
You have the
practical.
money.
But it's not that much, and this is what I don't think people get. Chris, what's the maximum amount you can get under individual assistance if you reach the threshold where the president declares a disaster declaration, and this is the money that will go to people?
32.9.
Okay, 32.9. Now let's average. If you're a tornado or something like that, it's about $5,000. If it's a flood, it's about $7,500. Now, do you know what you got to do to get to that level of assistance? Most people think when the president declares a disaster, we make everybody whole. That's not what we do. It's a means test. The first question we ask is, did you have insurance? And if insurance met your needs, then you did the right thing. We're done. If you had uninsured losses, the next question will be, do you have the financial ability to pay back a loan? And if you do, you're going to go to the Small Business Administration. You're going to get a fixed low-interest disaster loan. And oh, by the way, for small businesses, that's the only assistance that we provide directly from the federal government in a disaster declaration. There are no grants from FEMA to small businesses. The best we can do is try to employ and hire locally, but we cannot go in and help a business financially. They can qualify for a loan. So you have to have no insurance or be underinsured. You have to reach where you cannot afford an SBA disaster loan. And again, the threshold for that is pretty low. And only then would you be considered for a grant. And that grant is going to be based upon demonstrated need. So you got title to your home? Are you a renter? Do you have a list of your contents? Can you prove that? Now you're talking to people after disaster who are basically dealing with losses of magnitudes that we don't even understand. They've lost family members, they've lost their living, they've lost their homes, and they're having to go through this bureaucratic process, and it can be very disconcerting. And then let's say you get to that level where we are going to give you the maximum award. We're going to ask you, do you have a checking account? We want to do direct deposit. Well, you know, people that didn't have insurance, couldn't get a loan, a lot of times don't even have a checking account. Now, you're going to give somebody who's financially already challenged to get day to day. And all of a sudden, we're going to infuse this cash. And that's really a bootstrap to help them get going. But could you imagine the challenges they're going to face if they've never managed money? If they've never had a checking account in their name? You know, they're the people that go down to the wire store to buy the money order to go pay the electric bill with cash, right? You know, they use check cashing services that take a percentage right off the top, even though it's a government check, right? And now you're going to put them in a situation where they've been impacted by a disaster, they've had the losses. We are going to be able to help them. But you know how many times they get ripped off by people coming in and knowing they got the money? They come in and like, have you ever signed a contract before? No, I usually do cash. And they'll go in and sign a contract where somebody will say, I'm going to fix your home, but I need the money up front because I got to go buy your supplies. And that's the last they ever see of them. So we take our most vulnerable people in the most vulnerable state, yet we don't give them the tools to manage the financial part of that recovery. That's why we are engaged with John. That's why we're engaged with Operation Hope. It is because we know that the pre-existings of a disaster, we don't have good programs for. We're not the ones that come in and deal with the affordable housing issue, the lack of jobs, lack of opportunity, high crime rates. But what we can do is provide that first step up. And we learned a long time ago, FEMA's just part of a team. Whether it's our Red Cross partners, other faith-based and volunteer groups, or Operation Hope. We're not good at everything, so we like to partner with people who are good at things we're not. So when we deal with disasters and we are helping the survivors, we can provide them the tools they need to recover. And it's not going to be easy. And again, nobody should ever think that just because the president's declared a disaster, everything gets better. For some people, it gets easier. But it's going to take a lot of effort. And again, as John points out, prior to that disaster, you'd be surprised the number of people who are middle class, think they've reached the American dream. They're a homeowner, they have a job, they may even have kids in school. Yeah, but John's right, they're one paycheck away from catastrophe. That's why divorce can be so financially devastating to families. That's why an unexpected illness or a layoff can devastate people. But the other thing that happens, they're not ready for a disaster. They're usually underinsured or don't have the insurance they need. And it creates a phenomenon. This is why I think from the standpoint of the financial institutions, they have a selfish interest in this as well. You ever heard the term rattle payments? I heard this in Florida the first time after our 04 hurricanes. People were underinsured. They had bought their homes 20 years ago and they had insurance for what their mortgage was. They were not prepared for what it was going to cost them to fix their homes. And so they had enough insurance to cover their outstanding balance on their mortgage. They couldn't fix their house. And if you couldn't fix your house, you can't live in it. And if you can't live in it, how do you keep making payments? So they would mail their checks in with their keys. And going, here's my payment, take it. That's called a rattle payment. I can no longer make my payments. I cannot fix my home. I have nowhere to live. I'm giving you my keys. And these were people that before the disaster didn't think they were poor, didn't think they would ever need these services, never thought they would be looking to organizations to help them out. That is what we deal with in this country. And that's why this is not something that's a feel-good exercise or one of those other MOUs we just signed because we signed them. I don't do that. This is because we know we have vulnerable populations, and in many cases people don't even know they're vulnerable, that in a disaster are going to need help that our programs won't be able to solve. But by working with Operation Hope, we can bring together resources to help people do the recovery, but also address some of the fundamental challenges they face. But again, think about it. If you've never had a checking account, here's these people saying, hey, we're going to help you, we're going to give you money. And how vulnerable people become if they don't have the skills and the tools to make sure that that isn't going to make them whole, but it can do a lot of good. But it can also be taken away from very quick by people who will prey on them. So this is why this MOU is important to us. This is why we think the partnership with John Bryant and his team is important, and why we are supporters of Operation Hope. So